Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the Trump administration will begin to aggressively revoke Chinese student visas. China has criticized the move and lodged a complaint with Washington. Rubio's announcement coming a day after he ordered U.S. embassies to stop visa interviews for all international students, as the department prepares to expand its screening of applicants' social media accounts.
Chinese students in the United States are the target of the Trump administration's latest move. In a post on X, America's top diplomat Marco Rubio announced the U.S. will begin revoking visas of Chinese students, including those with connection to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. Meanwhile, the State Department said Chinese students applying for visas, including students from Hong Kong, will face additional scrutiny.
Hi, everybody. If you're going to be applying for a visa, follow the normal process, the normal steps. Expect to be looked at, and we go on from there.
China has criticized the U.S. decision as unreasonable and said it had lodged protests with Washington.
Such a politicized and discriminatory action lays bare the U.S. lie that it upholds a so-called freedom and openness and will only further damage its image in the world and national reputation.
Chinese students are expressing concerns over the future of their studies in the U.S.
It's pretty absurd. It doesn't seem like something that could happen now. During the day, I scrolled others' reactions on social media. People seemed quite anxious. Although my major isn't particularly sensitive, the visa process hasn't even started yet. And the timeline is already quite tight since the school year begins in early August. Now with this situation and not knowing how long it will be suspended, I'm pretty worried.
Every student's welcome here.
Hundreds of thousands of Chinese students attend U.S. universities. It is not clear how many of them could be affected by the latest move. The revocation could disrupt a significant source of income for American universities and a crucial pipeline of talent for U.S. tech companies.
I'd like to welcome Elizabeth Economy, a senior fellow and co-chair of the program on the U.S., China, and the world at Stanford's Hoover Institution. So we have been seeing some efforts to de-escalate tensions between the U.S. and China. What do you think has prompted the Trump administration to announce this now?
I think the efforts to de-escalate, which were largely around the tariff pause, I think the administration looks at that as quite separate from any other actions that it might take. So, even as we had the tariff pause, we started to push forward on new export controls with China, and now we have this new initiative. So I think they see the two processes as largely not aligned, not in any way connected. That's not the way the Chinese government views it, of course, but that is the way I think the U.S. administration does. In terms of what's prompted this, I think there are some longstanding concerns that the administration has had about Chinese students in the United States, concerns over graduate students who might do some sort of intellectual property theft from the labs that they're working in. And this is, largely limited to students who are tied to the Chinese Communist Party or who are in STEM fields, right? Critical fields mostly means STEM fields, science and technology fields. Or graduate students who, might take what they learn and then go back to China and use that information in some ways that might harm U.S. national security. And then I think there's a third tier of students who are primarily undergraduate, where there's long been concern that some of these students are used by the Chinese Communist Party. They bring pressure to bear on these students to spy on other Chinese students and create a kind of, environment of fear among the Chinese student population. And that's very much something that is antithetical to, a U.S. College education where everybody should feel safe to voice his or her own opinions and views. So I think there are a range of issues that this is supposed to address. I don't think this is the way to go about doing it, but I think that is in the back of the minds of the White House.
Well, that is exactly what I wanted to ask you next, is how founded these concerns are, and then whether, to what degree revoking student visas is an appropriate way to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think very few undergraduates are going to be members of the Communist Party. Becoming a member of the Communist Party is actually a fairly long, drawn-out process that typically begins, it can begin any time, but usually after you have graduated from college, or, you're in your 20s or even later in life. And it can take a year or more to become a member. It's not like simply signing up like it would be in Germany or the United States to join a party. It's a big deal. You have to prove your worth and your merit. And only about 7% of the population overall in China is a member of the Communist Party. So it's not even that significant a percentage. So I think what the administration should be doing is, better pre-screening of applicants. And I think this is something that they do want to do. We do want to make sure that we don't end up in a situation like we had a couple of years ago where there were about 1,000 Chinese graduate students who had ties to Chinese military institutions that had not been revealed. So we know that the Chinese government put them in these positions in our labs in order to access information and technology. We don't want that to happen. At the same time, we want to welcome, Chinese students. They're talented, they're terrific participants and members of our college and university communities, and there's no reason to keep them out. But I think we just need to make sure that they're coming here for the right reasons. They want to be part of the U.S. College community that is open and free, and they're not planning to participate in some kind of, covert or coercive action on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party while they're here.
And do you expect any countermeasures from China? Will there be consequences for American students or businesses there?
I mean, it's possible that the Chinese government would take action against American students or American universities that have programs. Johns Hopkins has a program. Duke University has a program. Juilliard, our renowned music institution has a program. There are about 6 or 7 U.S. universities that have some form of joint programs. NYU is another one. The truth is, though, there are only about 800 to 1,000 American students in China. So there's very little opportunity for a tit for tat, of sort of equivalence in this way, because the U.S. has between 250 and 300,000 Chinese students. So I think, for China to take action against the very few students that it has from the United States, I think would be a mistake. But they could tighten restrictions on some of the universities, make it more difficult for them to operate in retaliation.
Well, thank you so much for joining us to share your insights today. We've been speaking with Elizabeth Economy, a senior fellow at Stanford's Hoover Institution.